Hello everyone, welcome to this session on emotional intelligence in practice. My name is George, and today I'm going to speak about 5 steps to boost your productivity. Before we begin, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I started 3 years ago at Amazon Web Services, and during my Embark, I did all 13 AWS certifications. Back then, it was a world record, as far as I know, and people asked me, George, how did you do it? Well, I then spent the next 3 years doing presentations and speaking on these tips and tricks to be productive, 18 sessions to be exact, and also 192 mentoring sessions. Out of the back of that, I still was able to do my normal job, my day job, attending customers, and with that I also got 2 awards on Bias for Action and Think Big. So today, I'm going to share with you my secrets that I used to get this type of productivity. And with me, I have my colleague, Bruno. And, well, Bruno is a bit different than I am. Bruno is lazy, he's distracted, and he's biased in his opinions. Also, Bruno is very emotional. He can get upset sometimes, he can be arrogant, he can be aggressive. And there was actually a time, a couple of years ago, when he had a nervous breakdown. But one thing that I admire in Bruno is that he's tireless. He just keeps going, even when I'm completely exhausted. But the reason why you don't see Bruno sitting here next to me is because Bruno is actually inside of my head. He lives here in the very center of my brain, and I live in the outer part of the brain called the neocortex. From an evolutionary perspective, Bruno is much older than I am, and he controls the inputs and the outputs of the brain, the inputs via the thalamus and the outputs via the amygdala. You probably have heard of Bruno or this concept before. It might sound familiar. This is because it has other names in the literature. For example, on the book Thinking Fast and Slow, Bruno is called the System 1. Of a pair of 2 systems. Or, in the book The Chimp Paradox, Bruno is a combination between the chimp, the computer, and the gremlins. In my case, I decided to call it Bruno, and feel free to reach out to me if you want to know the reason why. But there are other references about this concept out there. Many authors have mentioned it, but they all kind of agree in the following characteristics. Well, they say that Bruno avoids pain, loss, and rejection, while seeking for safety, control, and pleasure. Let's stop here for a minute. This is important. I mean, when you're trying to avoid pain and loss and rejection, back in the days, this made sense. Well, you're trying to avoid being eaten by a lion, you are trying to avoid the loss of shelter or food, or you are trying to avoid the rejection of your peers, of your group. And if you think about it, this could be a life-threatening situation back in the days. But today, what this causes is for people to avoid losing the confidence of a peer at work. Or they might feel that they don't want to be rejected from the group, professional group inside their job. So what results is what we call social cohesion, where people are basically happy with the group that they have. But social cohesion is also known to result in lower levels of productivity, of creativity, and innovation. So really think about this. It's not this bad, because over time, me and Bruno, we kind of managed to work together, the 2 of us. Here's how it works. So Bruno receives the emotional stimulus from the thalamus, and then redirects that information into the cortex, where I apply some logic and some rationality to those feelings, and then I return back the information into the amygdala, where Bruno then replies with the emotional responses. Typically, this works well. Now, there are certain situations that scientists have identified that there is a direct pathway from the thalamus to the amygdala. In other words, there is a way for Bruno to reply at the same time that I am replying. More interestingly, scientists have discovered that this direct pathway is faster than the indirect pathway via the cortex. This is why sometimes I have to come back to something that Bruno has mentioned, and I say, well, that's not exactly what I meant something else, because Bruno was faster than I was replying to that comment. Okay, fair enough, we can still correct certain situations, but the issue is, when there is a situation of danger, or continuous danger, or threat, a stress. So remember that nowadays, this sort of threat, it can be the threat of work environment or social environment on our private life. In this sort of situation, Bruno is able to completely disconnect this indirect pathway, and Bruno will take over. Remember, this is required when you are trying to save your life. Back in the days, maybe not today. This is described in the book Emotional Intelligence as emotional hijacking and has a high impact on the way that we behave at work nowadays. So, in summary, what we're going to learn today in these 5 practical emotional intelligence steps is how we can address the concerns and the needs of our emotional Bruno in order to have this productive George. And I'm going to explain the tips and tricks that I used and I still use over the years to understand how I can achieve this sort of result. So let's start with step 1. Step 1 is calm down. And as you can imagine, this is to directly address the concerns and the emotions of Bruno. So how to manage Bruno's emotions. When we are trying to calm down, one of the easiest ways to do this is to hug a loved one, which means having this sort of reaction of our body to something that is positive. And you might think, well, George, that's fantastic, but how do I hug a loved one in the meeting? Or if I'm on stage doing a presentation, do I hug the cameraman? Well, there's another trick. Actually, what you can do is you can visualize. This method is described in the book The Charisma Myth, and it sort of makes sense. So let's follow the path. When you visualize something, you are injecting this image via the thalamus, and as you can remember, Bruno is quicker to reply, to process this sort of input. So Bruno will process this image as something real, and it will get you the benefits, that positive feeling out of it, before the cortex is actually able to identify that it's just an image, it's not the real thing. So, really interesting trick. Another thing that you can do, which is relatively easy, is to exercise. So scientists are still evaluating and analyzing the impact of exercise on our life and on our well-being, but they have identified 2 hormones already. So one of them is endorphin and the other one is serotonin. So endorphin is known to reduce pain, the feeling of pain, and reduce stress, while serotonin will help you to increase the feeling of happiness, of focus, and calm. And again, you might say, well, I don't have the time for exercise. We'll already have such a busy life. Not to worry. Scientists have also identified that even a 10-minute walk is enough to produce the necessary quantity or the equivalent quantity of these hormones to 45 minutes of walking. So if you're feeling stressed, if you just came out of that complicated meeting, just go around the block. Just the next call, why don't you do it while you are walking and having that conversation with a friend? That will help. So once we manage to calm down, then we want to keep calm. So how do we perpetuate this feeling? Scientists have also tried to understand what is the best method or remedy for loneliness or for depression. And there are many tips and tricks out there and many mechanisms, but the one that scientists have identified as the best one is gratitude journaling. And this is about just writing down what happened during the day that was positive for you. What did you like? What fantastic things did you find? And it could be just that wonderful coffee that you just had in the morning. If you repeat this over time, it will get better and will get into things that are more important to you, more impactful. And how many times do you need to do this? Well, not every day. Scientists also have identified 3 as the magic number, which means if you do it more often, it doesn't really have that impact. If you do it less times, you will not be doing it enough. So 3 times the magic number. And again, you might say, well, I have to do exercise, I'd have to do gratitude journaling. I don't have the time, George. Worry not. At Amazon, we already do this sort of thing. In my case, I send accolades. You probably do that as well. I receive accolades and I register, so I archive those accolades, and these are positive feelings that I can review later. We also have the trip reports telling about the fantastic things that we've done, the 2x2s, the MBR, monthly business reviews, where we explain the fantastic impact we had with the customers. And when we compile all of that, if we are doing this periodically, every week, every day, then at a certain point in time, you will end up with a promotion doc. So a promotion document, remember, is that fantastic document where we talk about the great person that we are and the fantastic impact that we have done on our customers and on the company. What better way to keep calm? So another way to do this, to keep calm, is to practice empathy. Maybe what that other person said, that negative feedback, maybe it was not with bad intention. It was probably true. Maybe it was for the best, thinking about the best for you. Well, try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And you don't have to agree with the person. Remember this as well. Understanding others, you don't have to agree with them. This concept is well explained in the book, Never Split the Difference, where you learn about active listening, truly listening to what another person is trying to convey in terms of message to you. What is their intentions? And once you have the sympathy and understand people, you can then move on to compassion. So compassion is not only understanding someone, but is also willing to help that person. Well, the person might have had a bad day and they just need a hug. That's a helpful attitude. Also, forgiveness. Forgiving someone is a way to move on with something that is painful to you. And that is forgiving someone else, but also forgiving yourself. The book Daring Greatly talks about this mechanism of forgiving ourselves and being resilient to shame. Well, I can tell you a little story. When I arrived at Amazon, I used to send emails to people, and sometimes they would not reply. And I would think, well, didn't you see the email? Maybe you don't want to have a conversation with me. Maybe you are rejecting me. I then found myself, after a few months, with an avalanche of emails, I found myself not answering to the emails. So I was doing exactly the same thing. And I had to forgive myself for that as well. This is the sort of company and the speed that we live in. Another way to keep calm as well is to reduce the anxiety of our Bruno. And how we do that is by creating routines. Remember I mentioned that Bruno is tireless, so even when I'm exhausted, Bruno is still there. And also when I wake up in the morning. So one of my routines, and it's the one that I suggest that you start from, is waking up in the morning. So waking up requires you to sleep well, and it helps to always go to sleep and wake up at the same time every day. One of the other things that I do, or try to do at least, is to go to the swimming pool every morning. I have swimming pool at 6 a.m., so I have to wake up at 5, still drive a little bit until the swimming pool, and as you can imagine, it's not easy. I don't do it every day. I mean, life happens, and then there's an emergency, then I'm too tired, but I still try to practice a mechanism that I learned from this book, The Chimp Paradox. So in The Chimp Paradox, the author talks about doing things fast enough so that you don't allow your inner Bruno to come up with excuses. Your brain is not working, so your neocortex is not working fast enough, so just do it fast. And how can you do this? Well, what I do is I prepare things in advance at night, and I put them next to the door. So waking up has one objective: get out of the door. So I do it as quickly as possible. Get up, change on my way to the door, pick up the bag, and I'm out. I don't allow time to get these excuses and these concerns and this anxiety. Try it out. So let's do a checkpoint now. where are we? We have looked at the 2 steps to calm down and keep calm our emotional Bruno. So the next part is how can we then start being more productive? So let me tell you about these steps that I apply to be more productive. Step number 3, focus. And this is, again, to boost our productivity. In terms of focus, the first step is to schedule our attention slots or identify what are those attention slots. What do I mean by attention slots? Well, attention is not the same throughout the day. You have periods where you have the proactive attention. You're fully engaged with that activity, you're fully engaged with something that you have pleasure doing, and you might have that state of flow. You don't even realize that the time has passed. Then you have the active attention. For example, when you are driving, you are able to drive while you have your conversation with someone else where you're thinking about another topic and shopping list and so forth. So that's active attention. You're there, but you can do other things in parallel. And then there's the inactive attention. Probably 6 p.m. On a Friday, you're not there at all. But everyone has a different biological clock. Everyone has different routines. So the exact time of day when you have this proactive attention, day and the week, might differ. You have to identify it. And it's important to identify it because scientists say that you will only have, on average, 4 hours of this proactive attention. So imagine that you lose that slot. Or imagine that you spend those 4 hours, I don't know, reading less important emails instead of doing something that you really find productive. So identifying and then scheduling, blocking those periods are what you need to do. And you also have to understand that Bruno is tireless. So when you are exhausted, Bruno will take over. You also don't want to use on the important tasks the brain processing of Bruno. You want to use your own whenever you have that proactive attention on things that are really important. So once you have then identified, you want to protect. And I'm saying protected, it kind of sounds easy, but it's not. Especially at Amazon, you have realized that we have requests from everywhere. Interesting projects, lots of customer requests. And this is by default. It's not your fault. So every one of us have heard of the 2 pizza teams. This is kind of the nature of innovation or the baseline for innovation. The thing is, when you have more responsibilities than you are actually able to produce or able to respond to, that will cause you to use frugality of your time and then use innovation. So basically invent and simplify in order to automate processes, in order to be able to reply quickly or in an automated fashion to your requests. So it's not your fault. Not everything that lands on your plate is your responsibility, but you will want to protect those sort of requests from the environment. So this might be harder to do than I'm explaining, and the reasons why that our Bruno, being a social being, will avoid loss. What kind of loss? For example, losing information about a specific project that you want to step out of, or losing the trust of a friend by saying no. On the other hand, our Bruno also seeks for control. Control means being aware of everything that is happening. I mean, if the colleagues next door or the colleagues on the next room, they're working on a project, I want to know about it. I want to know the fantastic because they're laughing and they're doing great things. I want to be there. But we have to decide what is really important, what is not, because we only have those small slots of proactive attention. Another thing to be aware of are distractions. And distractions, well, they might come from things that you might not be expecting. The typical things are the family, our loved ones, the cats, but also the environment, too much light, too low light, or the sirens, the noises on the streets, the ambulance, and so forth. So not only you have to protect the distractions from your phone, for example, or the TV, but also from the environment around you. This is quite important because according to scientists, after a distraction, you will need 25 minutes to refocus. So imagine that you have saw that notification on your phone. If you only have these 4 hours of proactive attention, 25 minutes are gone just because you looked at that message. Why is that message next to you? Keep it away. Keep that phone away. Again, this is not necessarily our fault. Remember that Bruno is distracted. And this is because Bruno avoids pain, and pain meaning, I don't know, I might be required to lose a loved one, lose that opportunity, that sort of thing. So this sort of needing to be connected to the world is important for Bruno, and also seeking control. I want to know what everyone is doing in my team. I want that message, those messages and those emails and those Slack channels from my team. I want to know what they're doing. Yes, but by now you probably understand the consequences. Sometimes as well, you might do all of these things. You really block all of the signals from the outer environment, and you want to be on that meeting just looking at the speaker, be fully concentrated, but your brain is everywhere. I know what that means. So again, there's a reason for this. So we have our Bruno that is aware of the surroundings, and it's hard to concentrate on a single point and a single subject. There is this book, Joy on Demand, that teaches you small steps to start with mindfulness. If you don't practice it already, of course. But for those who do, they will find that their head is clearer. So instead of listening to all of the noise and all of the ideas out there, you are able to concentrate on small things. There are two tricks that you can try right away. So one of them is about focusing on something very specific and practicing this throughout the day. For example, when you are waiting for coffee to pour into your cup, you can concentrate on your nose, on your breathing, and just focus there, just concentrate there for 10 seconds, for 20 seconds. Or if you're in a meeting and you are not able to concentrate, focus on your foot, on the back of your neck. Focus on something very small and stay there for a few seconds. Then to practice this over time, you can use another trick, which is to consider that your attention is like a puppy. So imagine that you're sitting and you have a puppy on your lap. Well, it's a puppy. The puppy will want to see everything. It's full of energy. It just goes around everywhere. And you need to bring the puppy back to your lap because it's not safe. And the puppy will try to go away and you bring the puppy again to your lap. So this sort of exercise of gently bringing your thoughts back into focus, that will allow you to get into this mindset of mindfulness, that you can then start focusing on one specific topic without the noise of our surroundings. Okay, last topic for focus is exercise. So this is the second time I'm talking about exercise, I understand, but this one is different. Sometimes we have that back pain, or we have that arm that is just cranking a little bit. That's a distraction as well. So that also removes your focus. How can we remove that sort of thing? Well, elasticity. If we stretch a lot, and probably do that or did that right before starting to work or after work, and you do this even without thinking when you have some pain. If you do this methodically and regularly, you will find yourself not having this sort of pain, which are distractions, and you will be able to focus more. So we went to steps 1, 2, and 3, and now we're going to step 4, prioritize, still to boost our productivity. So in terms of prioritize, number 1, we want to split what is important from what is urgent. How do we do that? Well, there is this matrix. You've seen it for sure somewhere. This is the Eisenhower matrix, or also called the importance versus urgency matrix. The idea is simple. So you have 4 quadrants, and you have what is urgent, not urgent, what is important, not important, and then you have 4 types of attitudes that you can take. If it is important and urgent, you do. If it's not urgent but is important, you can plan ahead or postpone. If it's not important and it's urgent, eventually you can delegate, and then if it's not important, not urgent, just eliminate. The interesting thing here is that there is the natural tendency, which makes sense, to do what is important and is urgent. This makes sense because we really need to address this, but over time, as a method, this might not work well. Let's see why. Remember the previous diagram? So when we are in a situation of stress, so in this case, it is important and it's urgent, does that mean you're going to lose your job if you don't do it correctly? You're going to lose someone else's trust? So see, there's a dangerous situation here. What happens in a dangerous situation? Bruno takes over and does not send these inputs, this stimulus, to the neocortex. So it's basically Bruno in charge. We don't want to get into that position. For example, if you have that password that needs to be changed on your laptop and you will be in a situation that you will not be able to work, change that password while it's not urgent, because when it gets to the day the password is not being changed, you're not thinking properly. Bruno is taking over. So you want to stay on the second quadrant. Plan. Think about the big things. Think about what you can work with time and with structure. Another interesting quadrant is quadrant number 3, delegate. And delegating here has different interesting dimensions. So on one hand, this is a space where Bruno actually likes to be in, and it makes sense. So let's remember, Bruno avoids pain, loss, and rejection, and it seeks for safety, control, and gratification. So if you find yourself looking at tasks that are urgent but not important, you will get these fast and quick cycles of gratification, immediate gratification. And you will also be in a comfort zone. See, if it's something that is not important, what's wrong with getting it wrong? What's wrong with making a bad task or producing a bad result? No impact. No one will lose a customer. So we are in this comfort zone, in safety, and eventually these are tasks that we have done before, so we have control over these tasks. We avoid pain, loss, and rejection while we are in our comfort zone. So this is where actually you need to take over and delegate. Delegate meaning scaling at Amazon. You know how to do those things. You do them well. Teach others. Share, scale, or produce the documentation that will allow people to do that thing for you. Automate it. So apply the invent and simplify leadership principles. That is also delegation. Another delegation is escalation. So if you are in trouble, this is urgent, make sure you reach out for help. Remember again, so Bruno avoids rejection of asking for help. What if people don't want to help? They also avoid the possibility of loss. So losing a friend or a colleague if we exert too much requirements or if we ask too much of these colleagues. But we have to counterbalance these because it's not our rationality and our logic in place, it is our emotional side in place. So this Eisenhower matrix, I've seen so many people saying that they started to implement and then they thought, well, this doesn't work. Maybe they have whiteboards with Post-its on it. That's an option. Or maybe they had notebooks where they would scribble in the morning what they had to do. Maybe some sort of application, or Quip, or an app on the phone. The idea here is that it doesn't really matter, the tool. It's more about the process. So I've tried many tools, but mostly by trying every day or trying in multiple situations, depending on the urgency, it came to a situation where it became a method. It's a way of thinking. Now let's also see how we can apply this into some real-life scenarios. Email. And everyone here for sure knows how hard it is to manage our flood of emails. And this could also be something like the Slack channel if you have many messages or chime messages. So let's apply the mechanism. One thing that I do is I look at my email and I start distributing into folders, putting these messages into folders to see what I need to do next. And typically I have 4 folders, but I can then have subfolders inside of it. Don't break into too many, they become very hard to manage. So I have typically 4, and I drag the emails into the ones that I have to reply, the ones I can do later, the ones that I can delegate, and the ones I actually need to eliminate. In more detail, so if I'm going to do them, this needs to be something quick, so I tend to try to keep the emails short. And recently I've been playing around with machine learning, which is quite nice when you have to create some longer emails or very formal emails and you want to get that right. When I'm trying to plan for later a certain email or sets of emails, maybe I can group several emails together if they all belong to the same customer. For that one, I want to make sure that I don't forget what I need to do. So this is the point where you can create a task. So right-click on the email if you use Outlook, and you can create a task, or you can create an appointment, a meeting on your calendar. Just make sure you don't forget that task that you need to do, or that email that you need to reply. Then the delegates. So we've talked about this. You want to escalate fast. Find someone that knows this topic better than you or can address at this point in time better than you so that it does not become important. And I can refer to what Jeff Bezos used to do back in the days. For sure you've heard this story. But Jeff Bezos used to send or forward the emails with a question mark. And that would then drill down throughout managers until the email would find someone that could actually address and execute on the email. It's just a tip. Finally, if it is to eliminate, just eliminate it. But do remember certain rules on Outlook or on your corporate email. Remember that after you delete an email, it will be completely removed from your mailbox after 7 days. And after you send an email, it will be deleted after 30 days. So keep that in mind if there is something that you need to keep it for a longer time and just archive it or find some other solution. Another perspective on how to use the Eisenhower matrix is to manage your calendar. In this case in particular, I also use a few colors and I break it down into what are the things that I should really look into or the things that are not that important. And the two most important colors in this case are orange and green on my calendar. I mean, these are the colors that I use. You can decide for your own type of colors. But I use these ones so that I can look at my calendar and immediately know if I can drop from a call or not. Maybe it's a training. It's a training that I want to go. No one will miss me. I didn't commit to that training, so it's green. If I have the time, I will go. But if it's orange, it's probably a one-on-one, or it's a customer meeting, or something that people need me there, and I really have to go. So it allows me to be flexible throughout the day just by looking at the calendar. You will also note other colors, especially the overbooked, so things that I need to address because this is stakeholder management, or the notes, where I put an additional appointment next to the main appointment so that I have more information about that specific topic. And then there are the breaks, but we'll talk about that later. So we've covered already 4 steps. Let's move on to the final step, execute. For execution, one first important thing is to think about a topic that we usually think creates more productivity. Multitasking. I mean, if I do more than one task at the same time, I will be productive, right? Well, not exactly. For those who understand about processors, well, probably some of you will at least have that background within Amazon Web Services. Processors in computers, if they have only one core, they are able to do one instruction at a time. But the thing is, they do that so fast and in cycles that it feels like they're doing things in parallel. You have multiple windows. But scientists have mapped the behavior of a processor into our daily life, and they have found out something that is called context switching. It happens in computers, and it happens within our brain as well. Every time we do the context switching, we are actually adding more time to the overall execution of these tasks. See the diagram here. As you can see, if I do 3 tasks in sequence, I will have this context switching in the middle. But if I'm constantly swapping between one task and the other, even if it feels like I'm doing them in parallel, but our brain is doing them in sequence, just constantly switching, overall, I will spend more time on those tasks. And probably I will also get more tired. Okay, and talking about being tired, remember again that while Bruno is tireless, our brain, the neocortex part of our brain, the logic and the rational part of the brain, it actually consumes a lot of energy. Overall, the brain consumes about 20% of all the energy required by the body. And the neocortex gets tired very quickly. Remember the proactive attention. So one of the things that we don't want to do is waste this energy and waste this attention in things that are not productive. And even if you're trying to do a single threaded execution, so you're on that call or on that meeting and you're focused on the speaker and you're trying to remember the things someone else told you on the corridor. Or if you're doing some work and still trying to remember the shopping list for your kids when you get home, that is also spending your energy from the brain. So, in order to make sure you use all the available energy in things that are really productive, you need to dump the things that will require you to memorize. So, the quickest way to do this is dumping things into lists. And in my case, the application that I use is Google Tasks. It works really well. And you can create multiple tasks lists, and it works offline if you don't have internet, and with a bit more work, you can even share it with someone else. And typically, on those tasks lists, I have one for work topics, the other one for personal topics, shopping list, travel, and then I have the special one, which is the star one. And the star one allows me to prioritize. So I have all of the things that I want to do, what I'm going to do today. I just put some stars in some of the tasks on those lists, and those that are starred will show up on the first list, the star list. And I know, okay, these are the ones that I need to focus today. These are the ones I'm going to work on today and to get this done. While I'm doing this, I also have to be careful to take breaks. So I've been talking about breaks, but it's important to look at the flight operators. These are the people, the professionals that are on our control towers, making sure that planes don't crash into each other. And they have to have this vision, this idea where all of the planes are. By law, they are required to take breaks and just go and listen to music, watch the birds, something to relax and recharge. We have to do these things as well. One of the ways, one of the mechanisms to do this is using the Pomodoro technique. You've heard of it for sure. So the Pomodoro technique is a technique that will tell you to work for a while and then take a break. 25 minutes, then take a 5-minute break. Then 25 minutes again, repeat 3 times, work, then take a break, then take a longer break. I mentioned to you the AWS certifications right in the beginning, and this was the mechanism I used to study to all of those exams during Embark, but I would use shorter periods. In my case, I would see a video, 3-4 minutes, and then take a 1-minute break that I would use just to look at the horizon, so relax the eyes, drink some water, do a bit of exercise, thinking about something else. But those constant breaks allowed me to study for hours and hours and hours and be ready and pass these exams. So try it out and see if it works for you as well. Another thing is to use these breaks to dump the memory. Remember the calendar back there? And you probably saw those black breaks between meetings. The reason for that is that whenever someone books a meeting with me, I then put breaks before and after. If the meeting is 1 hour, I put half an hour breaks before and after. If it's half an hour, 15-minute breaks. Those breaks will allow me to switch the context, dump all of the memory, all of the things from the previous memory, and plan the next steps, plan the next meeting in control, in a calm way, no stress. So this allows me to care for these kind of concerns from Bruno and others as well on the time that I have available, and to recharge this energy. So in practice, if you're asking me what sort of dumps do I do, and I get this question a lot, I use Quip mostly. So you go into Amazon Quip, and then you can create folders and you can create files. What I do is I have one document for person. For every individual that I've met and I've worked with at Amazon, I have a folder, a file where I put the information that we've talked about. So whenever I meet them again, I have those notes, make sure I'm following up on everything that I have promised. I have the same thing for customers, have the same thing for projects, and then I have just one spreadsheet for log. And this is kind of the gratitude journaling. So I keep everything that I have done in terms of meetings with customers, in terms of mentoring sessions, in terms of talks, so that I have these numbers that you have seen in the very beginning that will also then help me to create the promotion document for my next step in my career. So finally, in terms of execution exercise. Have I mentioned exercise before? Maybe I did. This will be the last time. So exercise at this point is from a different perspective, the perspective of increasing the metabolism. Scientists are still not sure how this really impacts our way of thinking. Well, it depends. Some say depending on the type of exercise, it will have different impact. But in my case, there's something that differs. When I wake up in the morning and I'm still driving to the swimming pool and I turn on an audiobook, I have to put the speed of 1x, so the normal speed to understand and keep up with that audiobook. When I come back from the swimming pool, I can put 1.5 speed. So I'm listening faster and understanding faster. It feels like my brain is processing faster. So imagine just with exercise, you start thinking faster. What can this do to your productivity? Okay, we circle back. Now let's look at what we've seen. I have explained how I manage Bruno's emotions by trying to keep calm, trying to calm down and then keep calm. And then how do I use the stable ecosystem, the stable environment in order to be more productive? So by focusing, by prioritizing, and then by executing. Let's look at this in detail, and I made this slide so that you can keep it for you, put it on your pocket. It's like this reminder. So what we've seen was to manage emotions when you are applying emotional intelligence in practice, you first want to calm down, and you do this by hugging a loved one, or if you cannot do it, by visualizing it. And then exercising as well to produce those hormones that will allow you to calm down and reduce stress. Once you've done that, keep calm. And you can do that by creating gratitude journals and by applying empathy and compassion to your relationships. And then by creating routines to make it much easier for your Bruno to face the real world right from the very beginning of your day in the morning. Then focus. So schedule and protect your attention. Remember, you only have 4 hours of proactive attention per day on average. Isolate yourself from distractions because that will take 25 minutes per distraction. You don't want to lose this. Then, even if you've tried everything, mindfulness will allow you to clear your brain and focus on what you want to focus. Once you are focused, then prioritize. So prioritizing meaning understanding what is the difference between what is important and what is urgent, and make this a mechanism that you apply every day, several times a day, depending on the circumstance. Then apply this, for example, to manage your emails and your calendar. Once you have this, then execute. Execute means single-threaded execution. It means clearing your mind by dumping all of the things that you have to memorize into lists. Then take breaks to recharge and exercise to increase your metabolism. Fantastic. We have reached the end of our journey. I hope you have enjoyed it, but don't go yet, because these things are very interesting in theory, but they are only valid if you actually put them in practice. Remember the title of the session? Emotional Intelligence, or EQ, in Practice. So what are you going to do next? Here's my suggestion. Okay, from an emotional intelligence point of view, look at the wiki, the Slack channel, and the newsletter from the Amazon Emotional Intelligence and Success team. From the productivity perspective, you have a group called Productivity Ninja. Also look at their wiki, Slack channel, and you can reach out to them to further sessions and further conversations. Within Ask.io, if you want to know more about this, there are also a few other sessions that I highly recommend. Take a note of them, find them in the session list, and after this we can have a further conversation. So you have my contact there, George Fonseca, and please don't remember to put the evaluation for the session. And I really hope you enjoyed it and hope that you will be the best productivity of yourself. Have a fantastic day ahead.